Brighter Media Group original.
Hey guys, welcome in to the Verse podcast. My name is John. Thank you for joining me in this daily pursuit to become more perceptive to what the Bible says. Today, reading from the book of Ecclesiastes, chapter 1, verses 17 and 18. Let's do it. I'll be honest with you today. The reason I found this verse and decided to use this verse is because I was feeling sad. Not in like a lamenting kind of way, but just thoroughly drained of my joy and felt like there was nothing left in me. Like I didn't want to be happy. I still kind of don't, even as I'm recording this. What a statement. Have you ever felt that way? It's not like I'm void of joy. I know I can have it. I know all the great things God has for me and that He's continuing to do for me. I know that He's close. I believe in His promises. I can feel Him near me. It's like I want to almost feel the weight of what I'm carrying just to know that it's real. Like I don't want to blow it off. I just want to like sit there in it. I don't know exactly what to call that, but I do know that's where I am. And I know that's what led me to today's verse. And I know that God led me there. And I'm not so sure that it directly applies to my situation, but I do know and believe that God has placed this verse in front of me to share with you today for a reason and for a purpose. And I think if we look on the surface, you're going to be like, huh? What's going on? But hang with me. First, we have to do what we always do in looking at our historical and biblical context. So important every time. And today we're reading from Ecclesiastes. This may be our first venture into Ecclesiastes, but it was written by a son of David and a king over Israel. Solomon, at least that's what is believed in the traditional view, is that he was the author. He was a very wealthy and wise man who described life as a puzzle he couldn't quite figure out and put together. Even though he was rich, even though he was smart, he had so much at his fingertips. It's actually identified as the wisdom literature in the Bible, like Proverbs, that helps us answer the questions, what is life and is it worth it? It's a book about life and how not to waste it. Solomon goes on a pilgrimage to find out the meaning of life, and he takes his readers with him on his binges of the pleasures of the flesh, accumulation of wealth, the reality of death. It sounds like the most epic book or movie that could ever be written. One, I feel like I need to spend more time with this, but what qualifies Solomon is that he can truly say, been there, done that, to almost anything. And what we read from today is the closing of the first chapter of Ecclesiastes, where Solomon is summarizing the fact that everything is futile, a pursuit of the wind, and that there's nothing new under the sun. Uplifting, right? Well, I actually do think so. So let's read how he closes this opening chapter with Ecclesiastes chapter 1, verses 17 and 18. So I set out to learn everything, from wisdom to madness and folly. But I learned firsthand that pursuing all this is like chasing the wind. The greater my wisdom, the greater my grief. To increase knowledge only increases sorrow. So what does Solomon mean by this? If I'm just really sad and I'm grieving, am I to think, oh, well, I must be really wise then? I know that's not it. I read a helpful commentary on today's passage from Matthew Henry. It says, the more we know, the more we see there is to be known, and consequently we perceive with greater clearness that our work is without end. The more we see of our former mistakes and blunders, which occasions much grief. We don't really understand how much we do not know until we start to learn about ourselves and know more about ourselves and the world around us. But the more we know ourselves and the world around us, the more we realize that we don't know very much at all. that there's all these things that must be mastered, and there's just an endless amount of information that we are never going to attain all the knowledge. We're never going to get what we seek. It's never ending. And as we grow in knowledge, we also come to understand how much our ignorance has caused and continues to cause problems for ourselves and for other people. And that's what is bringing sadness and grief. So what, are we supposed to stay dumb and ignorant so we can be happy? No, that would be cynical. I do believe it's important to grow in wisdom and knowledge. The Bible says that. But to actually gain a new and better perspective, an eternal perspective. As we get to know ourselves and those around us, what it's actually doing is illuminating our sin. It brings grief and sadness to see it and deal with it and address an uncomfortable reality in most cases, especially when it doesn't seem to be clear. Being aware of our limitations and our sin can mess us up. But it can also be incredibly liberating to know that there is actually a refuge for this, and his name is Jesus. We can run to him and be dependent on him to sustain us in his grace and in his wisdom. When we know our wisdom is limited, it frees us from the burden of trying to have it all together. It's a worthy pursuit to grow in wisdom and to grow in knowledge if it leads to a growing dependence on God. That's where the joy is. We're going to take a minute or so to reflect on that, to pray on that, to meditate on that. If you'd like to just be still, you can do whatever you'd like with this time. But this time is important, and I encourage you to actually do it and maybe not just skip to the next thing you're listening to or to just fast forward to the end, but to actually be present in that prayer and in that reflection and in that meditation and just be with God for a minute or so. It's a great, great practice. I encourage you to do that. We're going to do that now, and then we'll talk on the other side. Thanks for listening to the podcast today. I hope you are continuing to be encouraged by it. If it's your first time, so glad that you are here, and I hope you have found some great value in today's podcast. If you want more information on the podcast, where I get my information, what I'm using to study, what commentaries I use, those are linked in the episode notes, so check those out. There is a form there as well to submit a verse you want included in a future episode, or if you want to dive deeper into a verse, more than just the 10 minutes that I have in each podcast, let me know. You can contact me there. My social media is linked there as well. If you haven't yet and you are in Apple Podcasts, would you just take a quick minute or two, leave a rating and a review? That really helps the podcast grow and helps more people see it and helps more people join us in this journey and daily pursuit to become more perceptive to what the Bible says. Thanks for listening to the Verse Podcast today. I hope you make hope louder today. We'll talk tomorrow.